Welcome to the Beam Pod. In this episode, I talked to two students who share their advice on getting ready for the ESAT exam. The 4 S's of skills, strategy, speed, and stamina. I hope you find this useful. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast on the ESAT exam. And with me today, I have two students that know lots of information about this, and I am really excited that they're going to be sharing this with you. So with me, I have Tan Min Heng. Tan Min Heng, do you want to say hi?
Oh, hi.
And I also have with me An Kai Yang.
Hello.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. Very early for Min Heng too, right?
Yeah, it's 9 a.m. for me.
Okay, because you're still in the UK. All right, Min Heng, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Tan Min Heng, and then I'm from Malaysia, KTJ, and I'm currently studying in University of Cambridge as a second-year engineer.
Okay, thank you. And Kai Yang?
Hi, I'm Kai Yang. I'm currently studying at Help International School, taking A-levels in Malaysia, and I have received an offer for chemical engineering and biotechnology from Sydney Sussex College in Cambridge.
Very good. Okay, so Kai Yang, you've just done the ESAT exam, haven't you?
Well, it was 4 months ago, but yes.
Okay, so it's all nice and fresh in your head. So let me just explain a little bit about what this exam is. So if you're like Kai Yang, Min Heng, you're applying to Oxford or Cambridge, now it's also Oxford, then you need to register for this exam earlier than if you're applying to somewhere like Imperial. So the Oxford students, you will be doing the exam in October. If you're applying to Imperial, you can do it in October as well, or you could do the January sitting for this exam. There is pretty much zero tolerance for you failing to meet the registration deadlines or failing to do the exam. So it's really important that you get that done. Now, the dates are not out yet for registration as to when you should register for the exam. But last year, it was from the 31st of July. And if you have special requests in terms of support for the exam, for example, difficulty in seeing or hearing, then you can make, or wheelchair access, then you can make special requests, but you've got to do that earlier. So make sure you go on the website, which is the UAT UK website, and that's got all of the key dates for you and how you register. So the ESAT exam has got several parts to it. So there's a maths number 1 paper, which everybody must take, 27 multiple choice questions. You've got 40 minutes to do that. And then most candidates will then take 2 other modules, and that might be maths paper 2, it might be biology, chemistry, or physics. And again, they are 27 multiple choice questions, and they give you 40 minutes to answer those. All right, so that's a little bit about the actual test. So let's move to Min Heng, because I know you've done lots of work for MABECS. You're really good at tutoring for this exam and guiding students in the past about it. Can you just explain to me, as someone who's I know nothing about maths, but is there a difference in the math skills that are required for the maths paper 1 and the maths paper 2? Because some might have to do both of those.
Yeah, math paper 1 and paper 2. The core problem-solving skills required for them are quite similar, but then the topics itself will be a bit different, because the math paper 2 is slightly more advanced math, which includes some of the knowledge you've only learned in A-levels. For example, like more advanced calculus and like trigonometry problems and series extensions, for example. But Math 1 is mostly nearly pre-A-level knowledge with, like, as long as you have a good algebra, good problem-solving skills, you should be able to solve them. So Math 2 will be slightly more knowledge dense than Math 1. But it should be the same if you are taking A-levels. It shouldn't differ too much for you. Yeah.
Okay. So So for the maths 2 paper, is it an advantage to be doing further maths or not really? That shouldn't worry people.
I will assume that if you are doing a course that requires math too, you will be assumed to have been doing further maths in the first place. And yes, that will matter. Further
Okay.
math will matter.
Okay, so if you're doing, say, IB, which has got different topics, or you're in a school that doesn't have further maths, because not all schools offer it, the advice there would be to start your prep earlier if you have to do the maths 2 paper. Is that right?
Yeah, that is certainly true. Even for the people who are taking further math, I would also suggest to start the prep earlier because it is not just something that you can cram. It's not like a knowledge thing that you want to cram. It's something that you want to get used to doing in the long term. As in you want to be able to use to spotting patterns and just solving the questions in a very short time frame, which is like, yeah, something you'll have to train. If you have 1 year to train, that's more than enough for most people. But how many people actually have the willpower to train the ESAT for 1 year? Yeah.
Okay, got it. So, is it the same for the physics, chem, and bio then, in the sense that the knowledge is sort of A level or AS level or SPM level?
I would say AS level would be close. Yeah.
Okay, so it's beyond SPM level, so it's AS level.
Yeah. The problems in there are very similar to AS level problems.
Okay, got it, right. So it's mastering that subject knowledge. Are the questions different, asked in a different way? Do they test different skills than, say, an A level or an IB paper?
Yeah, the skills they test are very different. As you can see in the ESAT format, right, it's 40 minutes for 27 questions, as opposed to you getting a full 10 minutes just to solve one question and then show all the writing, like all the proof steps in a regular question. In ESAT, they just want you to have like less than 1.5 minutes to read through all the question, go through all the answers, and just be able to pinpoint that question almost as fast as you read it, which is a very different skill set. And without calculator, that would already be a very tough ask for a lot of people, right?
Okay, so no calculator, so practicing doing that without your calculator. Okay, so Kaiyang, you obviously did very well in this test, so congratulations for that. When did you start preparing?
All right. To be honest, I actually started my prep a bit later than some of my friends, about 1 to 2 months before the date of the test, which I do not recommend, by the way. I was procrastinating because I was really anxious about doing the test. So I thought that if I don't start my prep now, then the test would be further away. Of course, that's not the case. So yeah, don't do that. In the end, the time frame I had, 1 to 2 months, it wasn't too drastic of an issue because I still have sufficient time to finish every single past paper for ENSA, ENGA, and then TMWA 1. And then I had time to go back and then repeat not just the same papers, but also as I got closer towards the test date, I would go back to the difficult questions, specifically the tricky ones that took like more than 5 minutes. For example, I would try and solve them again with my trying to remember the logic and techniques that I used.
Okay, so once you did start your preparation, it was pretty intense, but you actually devoted a lot of time to it by the sounds of it, right? If you managed to get through all those past papers.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So there's kind of two strategies there. I would be in the Minheng group, I think, where, a little bit of prep all the time for a year before and build up. Or there's the Kaiyang way of doing it, where just for 2 months, this is like your main focus is this exam. And it also depends, I guess, what else you've got on your plate at that time, right? And what other commitments you've got. So you mentioned an interesting thing there about ENGA papers. So you found it useful to go back to those past papers because, of course, there aren't that many ESAT past papers.
Yes, because from the resources I found online, I only found the Pearson ESAT practice tests for ESAT papers specifically. Everything else was ENGA or ENSA, so I would just do those instead. And I found that the ENGA and ENSA papers, usually the difficulty would be at a higher level compared to the practice tests that Pearson put out. And so those would be better for practicing. But of course, Pearson's tests were great for getting used to the format because they're formatted exactly the same way as the actual test.
Yeah. That's true. So Min Heng, have you found other resources that students have found useful in the past, apart from the ESAT papers and the ENGA papers?
Other resources, actually not particularly, because these kind of problems are not that common. This is a very Cambridge admission test exclusive thing. So what I think the only thing you can get is to, in general, try to train up your intuition and algebraic speeds, basically. These things can be done in a lot of ways, such that, for example, in regular math papers or regular physics papers, try to finish them in half the time, for example, of the paper, and without calculator. Except for the stuff where you have to calculate a square root or a logarithm, that one you have no choice. But get used to using without calculators and doing just the regular syllabus stuff. And I think that will be good enough practice, honestly.
Okay, great. And so there's the website, I Want to Study Engineering. That's helpful, for example, interview preparation. Is it helpful for this admissions test preparation as well?
Not particularly directly helpful, but then it's just a fun place to have brain teasers. I would say it's not directly correlated to the skills.
Okay, great. So just kind of building up knowledge, but not the skills required for this. So something Kai Yang also mentioned was about doing the same question again and trying to solve it faster. How do you get students to build up speed? Because this seems to be an exam where speed is of the essence, right? Min Heng?
Okay, right. I also think that speed is like the most important part of this exam. Yes, everyone can solve that question like if you have 5 minutes, but then they want you to solve it in 1.5 minutes. So that's why a very important part when training for this type of admission test is to always go back to the question and solve it quicker and quicker. Once you do the questions again, and especially with the correct guidance, you can realize that there are all of the questions that exists a trick for you to solve them quickly. They never expect you to brute force a question that require a 20-line algebraic derivation. There's always a very smart trick that makes you instantly solve it. So even though the time frame may seem short, if you are very good at seeing those tricks, you may actually solve it even faster than what the short time frame already gave you. That's the trick to getting more and more comfortable in the ESAT and other admission tests too. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So there are certain tricks to help you get faster. So Kai Yang, your reasoning behind going back to questions that you got right and redoing them, that was because you wanted to increase your speed. So you didn't just focus on the questions that you got wrong, you also focused on the questions that you got right.
Yes.
Okay, so going back and trying to do it in a different way that's a lot more efficient. Did you sort of have, Kai Yang, did you have different strategies and way to approach questions based on different types of questions? Did you sort of develop a pattern of, oh, this type of question is best solved in this way?
Yes. So basically, after doing like a lot of papers, over time, I sort of like start spotting a certain pattern in the questions, and you sort of get a sense for what they're looking for. And in that case, it's sometimes almost becomes like muscle memory, where you just start writing algebra and eventually you're able to get the answer really quickly, basically, because the question style is just really similar across all the papers that I've done.
Okay. Yeah, I love that phrase, muscle memory. It resonates with what Min Heng was saying about understanding the tricks for each type. Oh, it's this type of question. Okay, I've got to kind of do it this way. So Min Heng, in your experience, are students good at building up stamina as well? Because you've got three papers, each one 40 minutes, and you do them immediately, right? One after the other. Presumably that's pretty exhausting given that most exams these days are about 90 minutes, right? Or just under 2 hours. Are students good at doing, or do you recommend that students do all three past papers at once?
Yeah, like building mental resilience is certainly a very important trait, especially because during these tests, you are using your brain in overdrive, you could say. You are just question after question after question without time to check, without time to rest. And there are two things that, firstly, you'll just get like mental fog if you use the brain too much, and then just sometimes just stop being able to think clearly. And also, you are much more prone to careless mistakes. And the ESAT is not forgiving at all when it comes to careless mistakes. All the multiple choice questions, they know exactly what careless mistake they want to catch you for. So that's why, yeah, being able to do one sitting for like at least 2 hours is just a basic skill that you will need, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. And how early do you think students should be moving to doing two or ideally three papers in one sitting nonstop, like a couple of months before the exam or earlier?
This heavily depends on the students themselves because from my experience, for most students who recently started practicing papers, they take 4 times the amount of required time to finish a paper. And with that, they are definitely it's not working. But once a student reaches a sort of equilibrium where this is the optimal amount of time they can finish in a test, they start doing well on tests, they get 80% and then finishing it in just the right time. Yeah, now do 2 papers at once and then see if you can maintain that amount of accuracy throughout the 2 papers. And then it should be a gradual increase like this.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, really good advice as to how you increase your mental resilience, as you call it, and your accuracy as you go along once you sort of mastered the subject matter. Okay, that was really useful advice. So Kayang, did you sort of consciously think about building up your stamina in your strategy as well? You did the papers together.
Well, from my experience, I didn't really feel that doing multiple papers back to back was too strenuous. In fact, I sort of like doing chemistry immediately after maths because it feels like sort of a breather because maths is a lot more time intensive than chemistry from my experience. So after cramming all these math questions in a set amount of time, then switching to chemistry where you can spot the answer in a few seconds in some cases, it feels much more like a break in some sense.
Okay, well, that's a really nice thing to hear because obviously then Chem Eng is a really good fit for you because you obviously really like your chemistry. So you were enjoying that bit as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's nice. So just to recap, you did maths 1, maths 2, and the chemistry one.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so are there any other tips that you would like to share, Kayang, in your preparation?
In terms of, well, I would say that if you encounter something that isn't like that you learned in IGCSE and then you forgot, it would be helpful to go back and just review the material a bit. For example, I forgot a lot of geometry rules. Then when I was doing math one, those were costing me a lot of time. And stoichiometry, no, not stoichiometry, sorry. Chromatography in chemistry isn't covered in AS, but it does come out in the ESAT. Then one thing that I wish I did before the exam that I only looking back on it, I feel like extremely lucky is that I was practicing all my questions with paper and pencil, but I was expecting to get acrylic sheets and markers for the actual exam because that's what the other person who took the ESAT told me. But then when I walked to my center on the test day, they gave me papers and pencils and I was like so happy. Then like Afterwards, I learned one of my friends was given a whiteboard and a marker, which just sounds like absolute torture. So I would say that before you book your test, definitely call them up and ask them what sort of working material they give you. So you can either practice with that or find a different test center, because whiteboard and marker is just like horrible.
Yeah, what great advice. I know when I was at KTJ, some of them got horrible fat marker pens and these little whiteboards. And yeah, you're right. They found that really, really difficult to work with. And they found the way that they wrote on the pen didn't write nicely. So it was really distracting for them. Yeah. So excellent advice. Okay, Kayang, so in your preparation, did you work with some of your peers to help you get ready for this exam?
I did work with friends to a limited extent. For example, me and a friend of mine would usually study around the same time at school, and it helped motivate us to actually keep studying for the ESAT. Like, I would walk in to the break room and then I would see him studying and I'd be like, oh God, I need to study as well. But we would largely work on our own individual papers, but we would discuss the difficult questions we found in each paper. We also experimented with a few other methods to improve timing. Like, we had one session where we tried doing a question at the same time and seeing who got the answer first and turned into sort of competition. It wasn't the most efficient, but it was fun, which is sort of important so you don't get too stressed when preparing for these tests.
Yes, that's true. Try keep it fun and having somebody with you on this journey that understands how stressful it is and how hard you're working for it. Yeah, I agree. It's always good to have a friend on these journeys, right?
Yes.
Min Heng, do you have any final tips?
Yeah, one more final tip that I could give is try to read faster, because especially for those doing physics, physics is like a math but harder, because you have to spend 30 seconds already just wasted on trying to understand what this question is asking about. As opposed to math, they already give you the equation they want you to solve. But in physics, you have to derive out the equation, which is also very hard. I would say, yeah, train your speed reading skills. That's also a very important skill in the admission tests.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, and I loved your comment earlier about, generally people take 4 times the amount of time they should be taking when they start. So you either start your prep now really super early and you sort of build up, or you do the Kayang route where you just cram it lots and lots and lots for 2 months. But I think Kayang's comment about identifying the gaps and pockets in your knowledge and having to go back and fill those in is quite important. And so the amount of work that you need to do, you won't know until you start your prep. So I agree, get on top of the past papers and start doing them nice and early. Kayang's tip about when you book, double check your place and book early, because then you've got free choice of where you go. These test centers do get booked up. So you want to have the choice of your test center that's near you and you're comfortable with the resources. Okay, so thank you very much for all of your advice. That's really helpful. And good luck to everybody out there doing the ESAT, about to start their prep. Don't forget that it's never lost, because you're going to be using it in your real A-level exams. So it's always useful. Just view it as kind of early revision as well. So good luck with the test. Thank you very much, Min Heng. Thank you, Kayang, for joining us.
Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.